Hi everyone, and welcome to the book Refuge, and welcome to another recommendations video by me. So I don't super know what I'm gonna call this one yet, but it's inspired by a certain book, and I'll tell you when I get to it. And I really wanted to make a recommendation video for this book, but even though it fits into certain tropes that I can recommend it with, I didn't feel comfortable like putting it solely in a trope because it just felt so much bigger than any one trope that I could put it into, because it gave me so many feelings and I just didn't know how to categorize it. And so I basically built this video around this book, and then I picked other books that I've read this year that also made me feel that way. And it's not even that these books are necessarily like 5-star books, but they are just like extra unique, and I wanted them to have their own special video so that I could talk more about them, because when I do my weekly wrap-ups or my monthly wrap-up, it's not enough time to talk about a book. That's why I do a lot of trope recommendation videos, which you guys love. That's something that's really has boosted my channel, is all of the trope recommendations that I do. So this one, I'm basically just gonna call it, I think, like unique romances or special romances I've read this year. I don't know what we're gonna call this, but you clicked on it and I hope you won't be disappointed. I have some books from kind of like every genre in here, going from like, there's some that aren't too steamy to some straight up erotic ones to some really humorous ones. So I'm just going to kind of start with the stack and go through. This is going to be really unique. And one more note before we start. I don't know if you know this, but a couple months back I became an Amazon affiliate. So all the books I talk about in my videos, even if I don't like mention it, I have them in a Amazon affiliate store. This just means that if you end up purchasing any of these, I get a tiny like kickback for them, but mostly it's just a place where I'm starting to like categorize my recommendations. So if you miss a video or you want to see what I'm currently reading that week, you can go to the link down below. It's in my link tree, as well as I always link it down below. It's just called the Book Refuge on Amazon, and I have like the books that I'm currently reading, the supplies that I use to film, and other things like that if you want to keep up with that. So shameless plug for that, but you know, girls got a side hustle, so there we go. Okay, so let's get started with these recommendations, and I'm going to start with the one I want to talk about most, and that is the Takeover by T.L. Swan. So I read this book as an e-arc. I got it off of NetGalley, and I kind of picked it on a whim. So I've read everything else that T.L. Swan has written except for book 1 in this series. So this is actually book 2 in the Miles High Club, and I purchased it, or I asked for this as kind of a kick in the butt to get me to read the first one. But then I had just finished another book, and I've told you this before in previous videos, one of the ways that I read so many books and I don't have reading slumps and I kind of never tire of a book is that within 5 minutes of finishing a book, I start another one. I don't give myself time to like grieve or worry on a book or, think too much, because that is what sends you into a reading slump. You start comparing every book to the book you just read, and you don't want to fall in love with another book. And anyway, I'm rambling. This is going to be a long video because I really want to talk about this book. And So I picked up this one and I was like, well, whatever. Her books are usually like standalones. I double checked that it was about new characters in the series, so it wasn't a continuation, because she does have some books that you have to read them in order. And I just started reading it. So the setup of this book is that there is a guy named Tristan Miles, and he is part of the Miles family, which is what the series is about. And he is the acquisitions member of the family, and so he buys up other businesses. And our main heroine, her name is Monica Anderson, and she is a widow. She's 38. She has 3 sons. They're 17, 13, and 9. And her husband's been gone for 5 years, and she's been running his business. And Tristan comes in to buy her business, and they get off on a really bad foot. He just seems really arrogant, but he's really gorgeous, and so she just hates him. You know, it's one of those kind of like insta-hate. However, like, Tristan didn't do anything really bad, you know, but she's just having a bad day, and she's really insulted that he's trying to take this company, and she's putting everything she can into keeping her sons taken care of and her husband's business, her deceased husband's business going. So he puts a cherry on top by then asking her out to be like, hey, let's clear the air. I did not mean to get off on the wrong foot with you. So he's already like, he's still being cocky, but he's also being like, he's being really humble too, where he's like, hey, I didn't mean to make an enemy of you. What can I do? And Monica is just not having it. So fast forward 6 months later, and there is this conference that she is attending in France. And she goes to this conference, and he is a guest speaker there. And he remembers her, and she remembers him, and there's still that like magnet attraction that they had before. And this time he's just like not gonna take no for an answer, because he's like, this is fate that we both ended up here, because he's like, I wasn't gonna come to this conference, you weren't gonna come to this conference, let's do it. And so like, he's very charming and witty, and he's so funny, and he's a couple years younger than her, which is like really hard for her, but she's like, you know what, this could be the guy that gets me back into sex, back into dating, because she hasn't been with anyone since her husband, which I feel like is a really common thing. You know, it's a really common thing. And they have a amazing like 5-day fling. You know, the conference, they're together for 2 days, and then he invites her to Paris for 3 days to like another engagement that he has to go to, and they just have crazy sex, crazy fun. They laugh so much. Like it is so adorable. It's so wonderful. And she really starts to see that there's more to this guy than just what she saw of him initially. And so I just, yeah. I of course am not going to spoil this book. It isn't even out yet, so I'm not going to go too much about it. But the reason it's unique, because, you know, I've just described something you've probably seen before, but the reasons why I think this is unique and why you really need to read it is that, number one, it is so funny. Like, I can't tell you completely the things that are funny, because I won't spoil this book until it's out. But there's interactions with Tristan and her sons when they meet. The 2 older ones are very protective of their mother, and they have something to say about this guy. And the way that Tristan like interacts with them and will try to win them over and tries to win Monica over, he is a dream. Like he is. And there's something about this story that I consider it like part of this is fate, which I think a lot of romance is, like, it's supposed to be that. But, you know, Monica's been waiting for a long time, and she's been waiting for a sign to move on, but she's also really frightened because she doesn't want her sons to have a replacement father. And also, Tristan's only 34, maybe he's gonna want his own kids, maybe he's gonna want his own life. And so I don't normally read about widows. I don't normally read about single parents who have older kids. I don't normally read about women who are almost 40. Like, these are all things that they're not normally what I'm reading in romance, because none of those things are me, you know? And so it's hard for like self-insertion, right? So I'm making this entire rec video so that you will put this book on your to be read. I'm sure it's going to be Kindle Unlimited. Most all of her books are. And that you will give this book a try. In the meantime, I'm still going to read the first one. It's on my TBR for August, because one of the other brothers, it's his love story, and I'm interested in him now too. I heard that one is like just as funny, because I was laughing so hard. Like, this book, I read this book slow, and I don't do that. Like, this book took me like 6 hours, which I know that's a long time for me. Usually I'm like a 2-hour, boom, done. and I just wanted every page to be 2 times as long, and I wanted more time with these people. And it was one where like I liked the kids. I don't like reading kids in romance, especially like teenagers, and I loved it. So there you go. I've spent the first 10 minutes of this video just talking about this book. Please put it on your to be read list. If you're someone who has access to NetGalley, I believe it's like an instant approve on there. So go get it, go read it. I think it'll be a great intro to T.L. Swan for you. The other book of hers I love is much darker. It's a mafia romance. This one was pure delight, and the cover makes it look like it's a serious billionaire romance. I was snorting with laughter, and then I was crying because it's so beautiful. So there you go. I talked enough about that one. Let's move along. So let's move along to, we'll go to, and I've talked about this series in my last few videos that my wrap-up videos, because it's called Spellbound Hearts, and this book is called Taken by the Huntsman, and this is a fantasy romance. This is a very interesting mix of fae, magic, BDSM. It is set in modern times. It is a woman, her name is Cassie, and she falls, or she doesn't fall through time, and that happens in another one. And then there is Caterin the Erkling, who he is a hunter for the Fae world. So he hunts down Fae who have broke the law, and so he's someone who actually crosses over into the human world and back again. Most Fae either don't have permission or don't know how to do that. And so in this Fae world, they have fated mates, which I love that trope. And it was a prompt time because I read a lot of IAD in July, as you know. And so when he is in the human world on a hunt, he runs into Cassie. She is alone in an alley. I can't remember what happened to her to put her in that place, but he sees her and he knows that this is his fated mate. And so he takes her. So that's why it's called Taken by the Huntsman. He does kidnap her, but then he kidnaps her for 2 reasons, right? Number one, because she is his fated mate, and now that he's seen her, she is like marked to all Fae as his mate. So if any of his enemies in the human world would see her, they would know who she is. So he takes her to keep her safe, as well as he kidnaps her because she's his mate. So, however, the best part about this series and why it's so unique is that consent is so important. So besides that initial kidnapping, this is not like a kidnapper love story, because she is his queen basically. He knows she's going to be angry. It's so cool because you get to see it from his point of view, where he's like, what am I going to do to win her back? Like, this is a big deal what I'm doing. I'm taking her away from everything. I'm asking her to become immortal. I'm asking her to do all these things. And so it's really cool to see from his point of view, because he's not, like, he is an alpha and he has all the urges that come with being a fated mate, but he's never like, I will force you into it. He's not above a little bit of like kissy, kissy, smoochy, smoochy coercion, but he's never is like, you're my fated mate, we're gonna have sex now. That is all a consensual journey, and then we get to see how like BDSM works into that. And we get introduced to this world, and there's 3 books in this series as well as a novella, and they all have that a woman from the human world ends up in fairy somehow, and then they meet their fated mate, and all of them had such wonderful consent. Also in fairy, like, to rape someone is like one of the worst crimes you can do. So there's just so much agency for women. So even though this one involves someone being kidnapped, the other 2 aren't like that. They have to do with people like falling in. So if you really don't want to read this, you don't have to. You could skip to one of the other ones where it's not a kidnapping if you're against that. But I think you would be like okay with the, And Caterin he's actually probably the most alpha of the 3 guys too. One of them is about the Summer Prince and the Winter King, and like the Winter King, that one, he was just a precious little, I don't even know, precious little snowball. I loved him so much. The Winter King. So I highly suggest you give this a try. This one is on KU, and yeah, you should check it out. So next, I want to talk about, let's see, what else I got on my list here? Hunter. Okay, The Hunter by Kerrigan Byrne. So I have read all of the books in this series. I'm on book 5 right now, and each of them are pretty unique. However, to me, The Hunter was like the most unique of the series, and it also affected me the most. Like, The Highwayman is like, you should read The Highwayman, but I feel like most people talk about The Highwayman, and yes, you should absolutely read that. So I want to talk about The Hunter. This is the second book in the series. This is about a man named Christopher Argent. He is an assassin. He was raised in a prison because, which most of the boys in this series were, but him specifically because his mother was a prisoner. So he was born in prison and was like raised there while she was in jail. And he watched his mother like trade herself for their food and for their safety, and his mother like dies in his arms one night because she is getting raped, and he tries to stop it, and then they kill her because he did this. So he becomes this, like, he learns martial arts from another guy in prison. He becomes an assassin, and he's friends with Dorian Blackwell, who we meet in the first book. And he gets a contract to kill Millie LaCour, who is a actress, and she may or may not have been the mistress of a man at one point and have a son named Jacob, who that man wants to kill her. Doesn't want to hurt the son because Christopher has rules that he won't hurt children, and he won't like take trophies or do anything. He has weird rules, you know, assassins, they have their rules. Whatever. And then every time Christopher tries to kill her, which he tries to kill her 3 times, he ends up kissing her. And really it's amazing because this book is a fated mate too. You know, which you could say about a lot of romances, I guess. But to me, this read so much like an IAD novel. I know that's so weird, but just how she's performing one night and he's like doing some reconnaissance, and the way that Millie does her acting is that she'll pick someone in the crowd and she'll act to them, and she picks Christopher and she acts to him, and he instantly falls in love. And so when he goes to kill her, she thinks that he's there to kiss her, and so like he puts his hands around her neck and she's like, if you don't kiss me, I'll die. And it's funny because it's literally true. Like, if he hadn't kissed her, he would have killed her. And then another time he tries to kill her and he ends up kissing her, and then he ends up making a bargain with her. And this is tough, but when you see it, I mean, this is a dark historical, so sorry if you're not here for tough. Like, that's just how it is. He makes a deal with her that he will protect her from this contract if she will sleep with him. And for some reason, this doesn't click in his head that that's exactly what his mother used to have to do. And he hates the men who did that to his mother. So it's interesting. Like, it's an interesting thing. But I think you're going to fall in love with Christopher, and of course he realizes what an asshole that he's being, and I just felt like he was so unique. I have read a couple books now about like someone being sent to kill someone and then they fall in love, but the reason it felt so much like an IAD novel is there's one of the books in the series that's called No Rest for the Wicked, where it's the opposite. Like, the female Valkyrie gets sent to kill a vampire, and then like he gets blooded by her. And that's what this felt like. It just had that like animalistic, raw, like, my hands can't kill you because something is holding them back. And I loved it. This is like the longest book in the series, and all of these books are on Audible Escape if you have that. It's so good. Like, I love it so much. You should definitely check out this series, and you should check out Christopher, because I really think it's going to be my favorite. We'll see. I still have 3 books left to read in the series, so we'll see. But I've heard that the first 3 are the best 3, and if that's the case, this is it for me. Next, I want to do the other historical romance on here, and that is Someone to Watch Over Me by Lisa Kleypas. This is the first book in the Bow Street series. And this was just, oh my gosh, this was so unique to me. So this one is also on Audible Escape, but only the first one is. I have since read the entire trilogy this the month of July, and they were just all super good. So this is a Kleypas book that came out in 1999. So it's pre like Wallfowl, like all of those series by her. And this one is about a Bow Street worker named Grant Morgan, who comes across the body of Vivian Duval, who is a courtesan, and he has previously had interactions with her before. He's a little bit spurned by her because she refuses to have an affair with him, which is really funny. And when Vivian wakes up, she doesn't know who she is. And so Grant kind of takes her under his wing, and he has not the best intentions, because again, she embarrassed him and made him look bad, and so he's feeling a little bit bitter by that. And so he's kind of planning to take advantage of her, but it's also because he thinks she's faking it. Like, he thinks she's lying about not remembering who she is, and once that becomes really clear, he starts to feel bad. And so he ends up kind of like falling in love, he ends up falling in love with her, and you know, she gets informed that she's a courtesan, and all these people in town like know her and have slept with her, and she has no memory of that. And so man, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but there's a certain thing that happens between the two of them, and it becomes clear that she's not a courtesan. And so then it's like, what's going on? What's happening? And this leads into, this entire trilogy is, you know, based on Bow Street runners and kind of like cops. And so there's a mystery in like each one. And all three of them are so sexy and fun and creative. The second one is about the magistrate we'll meet in here. And then the third one is about a criminal that we meet along the way. And this series is so good. And so Grant, he's this big, hulking, brooding guy. He's a giant, he's called, and I love that. I love reading about beasts. I just love that. And the audio for this series is great. I did listen to them all on audio. I actually bought 2 and 3. But you can listen to this first one on there. So I highly, highly suggest this series. I am sad because I'm running out of Lisa Kleypas to read. I am slowly making my way through all of her books, and it's making me sad because I don't want to be done with them. But this trilogy is really good. It's really tight. I feel like it tells a nice like overarching story too, because it's telling the story of like the end of the Bow Street runners and when England got a like regular police force, which they didn't really have before then. So it was really good. Next, I want to talk about one that it was talked about a lot in the past, and I read it at the very end of last year, and I really, really loved it. It has one of my favorite tropes in it, but it also has one of my like least favorite tropes in it, and so it was a really interesting mix. And so for me, that's On the Island by Tracy Garvis Greaves. So if you've never heard about this book, because that's the thing, if you're new to Booktube, new to Romance Tube, maybe you haven't heard about this book. But this is it's not a shipwreck, it's plane crash, but it's a deserted island romance between a boy and his tutor. And it's always hard to explain, because in this case, especially because this isn't told in a fantastical way, like it's very raw and real, this is a case where that kind of relationship could be icky, right? Because it starts when he's 16, he's almost 17, and I think she's 32, and they are traveling to the place where his family is going to vacation for the summer, and he needs to catch up on some work because he had cancer a few years previously, and he needs to catch up on he needs to catch up on school, and she's going to be his tutor. And so him and her are in a plane crash together, and they end up stuck on an island for almost 3 years together. So nothing happens between them until he's over 18. But what's great about the book is it's like, when does that stuff matter? Like, when is the point where are you considered the last man and woman on earth? When is it no one's ever going to find us and we need companionship and love, or we're going to, like, not only are our physical bodies deteriorating, but our mental ones are. And I don't think anyone who's really read this has felt that it's creepy. I know it will sound like it to you, but, well, not to all of you, because some of you love this stuff. Like, I'm not painting that brush, but I know for me, this was one of the few, like, age gaps that before I read it, I was like, I don't get how this is going to work. But I really trusted the people who suggested it to me, and I gave it a try. And so I think it's a very unique book. The trope that I don't like, by the way, is I don't like shipwreck or plane wreck, or I just don't like that trope. Because I feel like there's not many other ways to tell it. Like, it's not a trope that you can get super creative with, because you either stay there forever or you get rescued. And then there's the, like, how do we transfer back to normal life? But this one's very interesting, because when they're on the island, they can be together with no judgments. But when they get home, she's a 33-year-old and he's 19, and she was the teacher who, like, preyed on him, right? And so this book takes place over a long time, and seeing how they'll deal with the PTSD of the island, with everything. But I really loved it. I think it's very unique. And if you haven't heard of this one, because it's been a while, I really want you to give it a try. Pick it back up. It's great. And then the last book I want to talk about that I think is really unique is The Player by Kresley Cole. This is book 3 in the Game Maker trilogy. However, each one of these could be a standalone to me. Like, they're about 3 brothers, but the brothers are so, like, disconnected from each other, and each of the stories takes place in kind of this, like, isolated capsule, that the parts of them that connect, it doesn't really matter too much. So this one is about Dimitri Sebastian, and he is a billionaire tech genius. All 3 of the brothers, they were horribly abused when they were kids, some of them in worse ways than others. And Sebastian meets Victoria, aka the Vice, who is a part of a grifter family, and he is her next mark. And yeah, I've seen stories like that before, but the things that is really unique about this is that in every word and deed and action, Dimitri appears to want to be taken advantage of. And that's really all that I'm going to say, because I don't want to, like, ruin this story or, like, twist anything for you. But I just had never read a book where it's so clear that there's something more going on about this grift than what you think. And it has her, like, her whole family is, like, helping her grift to this guy, and he just seems so ready to be taken by her. And of course, this is pretty erotic, so know that, like, this whole trilogy, it's an erotic contemporary romance for sure. He has some sexual trauma in his past that he's trying to work through, and it's actually, like, it's really beautiful because there's a few different scenes where you can tell he's trying to work through some things, and he needs help. And Victoria, it's like, is she here to help with that, or is she gonna make him worse by grifting him and then planning to, like, ditch out and, like, leave him in pain, you know? But I just think this whole series is pretty unique because there's just something about Kresley Cole. Like, there's a trope you think you've seen 100 times, and then the way that she does it, it's amazing. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video that I don't know what I'm going to title it yet, but 6 random unique recommendations. Again, please, no one is telling me to do this. Please put The Takeover on your TBR. It comes out August 25th or 27th. Read it. It is so good. When that time comes, I'll, like, maybe literally do, like, maybe I'll do a TL Swan video so that I can, like, talk spoilers about it and gush with you. So get your hands on it however you can. So thank you so much for watching. I put them in videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye.